Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this video, in this opportunity, we're going to explain about what is a new trend in language research, especially in the last 2 decades. So our group consists of 3 members. First is Muhammad Haikal Akbar, and then the second is Raihan Al-Kawadifa, and the last one is me, Muhammad Mulyanda. So, since 1997, language teaching research has published hundreds of research articles, most of which report on empirical studies with the common goal of better understanding how foreign language teaching of learning can be improved. So from this video, we try to show you what is the new trend that developed in the last 2 decades about research. We take this from the article that have been conducted by Paul Stapleton and King Shaw to investigate through a survey that look at the main focus of 8 of the 359 articles in categories such as pedagogical effects, teacher perception, and learner behaviors. The study served as an inventory of research interest in the first 20 years of the journal's existence. 2 decades, or about 20 years, I think is a period of time that sometimes like an opportunity to create an inventory of past events, as well as gain an overview of trend and pattern that may not be apparent from the previous year from year to year. In this commemorative article, we take the opportunity to reflect on the first 20 years of language research, teaching research by listing the studies described in paper from this period. By referring to the line of research that emerged from our coding process developed specifically for this review, we are making broader statement about the state of language education research in our time, this time. So in the first 20 volume of language teaching research, they identify about 359 articles, comprehensive and research-oriented articles. This number is not evenly distributed across 20 episodes. On the contrary, the percentage of articles published in the past time increases sharply. The first set has only 3 numbers, about 3 cards each. Language teaching research grew up 4 issues per year in episode 9 and 6 issues in volume 19 or episode 19. While in the first episode there were only 10 complete articles, and then in the 20 has about 36, an increase of nearly 4 times. This increase reflects an increase of other journals with similar content to language teaching research. To illustrate this growth, I will show you figure 1 or picture 1 that compare 10 peer-reviewed journals including language teaching research in terms of total page. Also notable in the number of journals that have cropped up over the past few decades. Undoubtedly, this increase reflects the growing number of teachers and researchers entering the field as the foreign language learning population grows with the globalization. This increase could also be related to the digitization of journals, which has made it possible to publish more articles without worrying about space constraints on paper. So to make it clear here, they developed 2 big rubrics, one that categorized as the main focus and another that produced subcategories under instructional effects. The rubric themselves can be termed a result because they represent a categorization of the research being conducted during the period. So here you can see on the table that it has some main focus. First of all, instructional effect. So what is description of instructional effects? So instructional effect refers to the studies whose primary function is to describe methods, techniques, approach that led to improved second language performance of students. So they identified here about 158 of articles. And then the second one is teacher cognition. What is teacher cognition? Teacher cognition refers to studies whose primary function is to investigate a wide range of elements, including the teacher attitudes, belief, confidence, self-image, and emotional disposition, among other similar traits, and how the cognition impacts on the teaching practice. The focus is on what teacher thinks. The number of articles in this main focus is 33. And then we have exploratory practice, refer to articles that report practitioners working to understand what they want to understand by using normal pedagogical practice as investigative tools. So we have about 25 articles here. And then teacher education. So what is teacher education? Teacher education research is referred to studies that investigate language teacher education program and lifelong career developmental programs. Usually, novice or student teachers' improvement in their teaching practice through those programs is the focus is often on novice on the pre-service teachers' practice and what they want to learn and how they grow up. And then we have around 24 articles here. And the next main focus is learner behaviors. Refers to the learner behaviors inside and outside the classroom, including such traits as their level of participation, degree of dominant behavior, learning style, learning strategies, degree or self-reflection, self-monitoring, and attitude toward and belief about learning. The focus is on what learners do. So the number of articles here is about 21. And then learner cognition refer to study that primarily focus on the learner's attitudes, belief, confidence, self-image, and emotional disposition, among other similar traits, and how these impact on their learning behaviors and patterns. The focus is on what learner thinks. And the number of articles here is 20. And then we have theoretical essay, narrative, and description. Include articles that propose new theories, frameworks, models, methods, description of practice, advocacy, narrative experience teaching, or researching, or critics. So the number of articles here is 18. And the next one is teacher practice. So teacher practice is referred to studies that primarily investigate teachers' practice, often via observation and interview, in order to better understand how they conduct classes. The focus is on what teachers do. The number of articles here is 18. And then we have second language acquisition mechanism. It refers to studies whose primary function is to better understand how second language are acquired, in contrast to what pedagogical techniques are best used. The number of articles here is 18. And then another main focus, we have instructional materials. It refers to studies that describe or investigate materials such as textbooks or word lists for pedagogical purpose. The number of articles here is 12. Assessment. It refers to study that primarily focus on the role of exams or tests in language teaching. The number of articles here is 10. And then curriculum and program development refer to study that describe or investigate language teaching program for curriculums and their reforms. The number of articles here is 9. And then we have the last one is review, surveys, meta studies. Includes articles that review a collection of studies or survey the profession or aspect of the profession from a perspective. The number of articles here is 5.
Number 2, the dominance of instructional effects. Table 2, subcategories of instructional effect. first subcategory is teaching techniques, refers to teaching methods other than task-related ones. And then task-related methods refers to task-related teaching methods. And then feedback refers to instructional effects whose main focus in the many forms of feedback, including request or corrective, provided to students from teachers across all language skills upon some productive use the L2. And then classroom discourse refers to teachers and students' classroom language use, which often illustrates a process of scaffolding. And then peer collaboration refers to instructional effects that focus on the efficiency of having learners collaborate in their language learning. And the last one is other studies that look into instructional effects. Number 3, focus on the teacher. The category with the greatest increase in frequency was teacher cognition. Over a decade ago, Borg 2006 observed in his review of over 180 published studies on language teacher recognition until 2006 that majority of work in this field has appeared since the mid-90s. Number 4, learner cognition and learner behavior. Taken together, learner behavior and learner cognition appear to have a sustained interest. This interest suggests the traditional top-down modernist and transmission-oriented methods of teaching that view learners as passive recipients of the teacher's methodology have case to be the only type of output. Number 5, exploratory practice. Our review shows there was a spike of interest in the middle years with an entire special issue devoted to exploratory practice. That interest appears to have declined in the second decade. However, this apparent decline is most likely simply a case of the term being subsumed into the umbrella term practitioner research, action research, exploratory action research, teacher research, case study, and narrative inquiry. Number 6, other categories. We find it interesting that there were few articles under this category. Over the 2 decades, this rather minimal showing may be continuing a downward trend from an earlier time when linguistics rose to dominate discussion of language pedagogy in the middle of the 20th century and afterwards. The last one, number 7, interest as informed by citation. In order to gain some insight into which category of article in LTR has had the greatest impact, we use LTR's 50 most cited articles as posted on its website in June 2016 and made note of their associated codes.
Okay, thank you for Mulyanda and Raihan. Okay, now I will explain about my part. In this graphic, we can see comparison from different research focus about trends and issues, new trends and issues about teaching and learning English foreign language. We can see in this table the most dominant focus is instructional effects. Then instructional effects takes bigger proportion than other research focus. Then other research focus in this graphic take small portion. There is teacher cognition, teacher practice, learner cognition, teacher education, learner behavior, exploratory practice, essay, narrative, integration, SLA, instructional materials, curriculum, assessment, and others. Okay, then table number 3. In this table, we can see some subcategories of instructional effects. The major part of nutrients and issue in teaching foreign language. There is article about task-related teaching techniques, classroom discourse, feedback, peer collaboration, and others. So the conclusion, number one is the first of this rapid increase in the number of research articles over double in the second decades compared to the first, and that increase only accelerated in last 5 years time period. Number two, the second broad observation from our findings is remarkable scope of focus covered over the 20 years, because we review about journal article of 20 years. The third observation concerns the impact of the socioculture has had on research in LTR and language teaching research as a whole. And number four, the last observation about influence of socioculture only becomes readily apparent via inventory studies such as the present on that make broader influence and most transparency. Means making journal is like building a wall of knowledge that we can take knowledge and passing knowledge with writing it and pass it to next generation. Maybe that's only from us. Thank you for attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.